So where Dish is, it used to be McCann's bar, and where the main dining room is, there used to be a pool table. And we would go there and play pool and drink cheap beer. And it's a room that's too small for a pool table, so they had a tiny queue on the wall. So if there, for certain shots, you had to pull down this tiny queue to shoot. So it was very, that was very funny. So one day we went to go to McCann's, and it was this restaurant, right, that seemingly popped up overnight. I'm sure it didn't, but we maybe hadn't tried to go there for a long time. And we were like, wait, this is the kind of restaurant I've been waiting for. And everyone said it wasn't going to make it, right? It's off of East Carson Street. It's on the south side. It's fancy. They took cash only for years, no credit cards. And I was sort of like, they have to make it. This restaurant has to stay here because this is exactly what we've sort of been waiting for. And I think around that time is when a shift started, because they didn't die, and people did want to go there. A lot of people seem to have moved here around the same time I did, because when I meet them, they're like, oh, 1997, 1998. We all were kind of waiting, not necessarily knowing each other, and waiting to kind of find our places.
We bought this place in December 99, and there was an old Irish bar that was here for about 54 years. We ran it as a McCann's, that was the name of the bar, for like about 3 months. And the last day of business as McCann's, in a way, was St. Patrick's Day. Big thing here in Pittsburgh, especially. And after that, we started a little process of renovation, and we did in stages. We were open still with the tarp in the back, the plaster coming off and all that kind of stuff. We closed for a couple of months, and then we opened in September 2000. As a dish osteria and bar. At the time we were in Pittsburgh since about just a couple of years. Me and my wife, she's from here, but we met in New York. We lived and worked in New York City, and then we did some traveling, and on the way back to the States we decided to make a base in here, because originally we already wanted to open something in New York, in Brooklyn actually, in Williamsburg. Back then there was practically nothing. It would have been like a great adventure over there too. But here we are, and we did this in the South Side, and especially for me, South Side was like a reminder of the Brooklyn neighborhood, like an East-West village kind of feel. We felt that there was like definitely a market for our little concept. And which one was like to create a bar with some food, no TV, like a social place. And coming from Italy, especially I grew up in Sicily, so from day one my menu was always going towards seafood. So I started to have sardines and octopus and tuna, clams and mussels always on the menu. In terms of dining, there was also this kind of, or either you go to a fine dining or you go to a bar and eat a sandwich or a burger. But there was nothing in between. I felt like back then it was not a big risk to do what me and my wife did it, because the food scene, the restaurant scene at the time was a kind of one direction.
I arrived in Pittsburgh in 1978. 18th of March 1978 to be exact. The first restaurant that my family took me to was Rico's, and I was really amazed to see like the fried zucchini, the fried provolone, all that Italian-American stuff on the menu. And then as I start to get familiar with the dining scene, I started to notice that all the menus, they were pretty much the same. Unless if you go to a Greek restaurant or Chinese or whatever.
Italian restaurants were all doing very poor renditions of Italian food, and growing up, my dad, would go apeshit about, Italian restaurants, and there happened to be one good one in McKees Rocks, that the Prima Donna, which, that was my dad. My dad loved that restaurant. I remember going there as a kid, but beyond that, everything was very kind of homogenized. Everybody was kind of battling for the same dollar. Like nobody wanted to say no. So everybody had a fillet, everybody had a shrimp cocktail, everybody had a crab cake.
Veal Parmesan, veal Scallopini, veal Romano. Everybody had scrod, not an Italian thing, but scrod with breadcrumbs. There were spots, Virginia spots, on every menu in Pittsburgh. If it was really fancy, crab meat hoselle, which is a old, well-known dish from the Duquesne Club. So it was supposedly a secret recipe, and since it came from the Duquesne Club, that really had a aura of prestige.
The first restaurant I got involved with was Johnny Launders in Robinson Town. And Johnny Launders, he was very, very innovative. The chef was actually a very good chef. Then we were doing a lot of stuff tableside. One of the things that we were doing that was very unique for the city was abalone, which is very sensitive. We have to be very careful the way you cook it. You cannot cook it too long, just a few seconds on each side.
And there was a very, very well-known restaurant in Irwin, PA, called Ben Gross's. Ben Gross's always advertised in Gourmet Magazine. And so in Pittsburgh, I was like, wow, they advertise in Gourmet Magazine. This is a big deal. And so they hired me as assistant chef. Ben Gross restaurant was owned by two brothers, Richard and Jerry Gross. If I wanted to try French dishes, they let me. They had special chien de rôtisseurs dinners and let me go wild. And that started to introduce me to the gastronomic elite of Pittsburgh. And I started to get some press. I got an inquiry about this French restaurant, a serious French restaurant, not just a French restaurant in name only. I had kind of heard about it because they took out little blurbs in the then Pittsburgh Press. There is no Pittsburgh Press anymore, and it just said La Normande. It had a little fleur-de-lis logo, and it was a series of conversations between Gaston and Alphonse, all in French. And every day it would be a little snippet of a conversation. Like, wow, what is this? It was these little teaser ads. And then I got a call. Hey, these guys have heard about you. They had one of your dinners. They want to talk to you. So I went in, and that's when I met Reuben Katz, who was the managing owner of what became La Normande. And then I met the business partner, a great guy by the name of Norman Schlesinger. He was a pioneer in PVC pipe, one of the two largest manufacturers of PVC pipe in the country. But because of his PVC pipe business, we had a solid financial footing, which is always important in the restaurant business. We opened La Normande in November of 1978. They never asked me how old I was. And I was like, I don't know, I was 24 years old. So at some point, we're already committed, we're about ready to open the restaurant, and Norman in conversation says, by the way, how old are you? I'm 24. Well, they're like, wow, really? You're 24. The other thing was he said, we're gonna take a month off in the summer, and I'm gonna fund you to go to France and to spend time with the great French chefs. And those were really formative times because I already had a lot of cooking experience. I had a CIA background, but to spend time in the kitchens with Paul Bocuse or Roger Verger or the great chefs of the day was really inspiring and enlightening. And we would bring back new ideas for La Normande.
We were always discussing food, and the wines that were all French, the liqueurs, the cognacs, Armagnacs, Calvados. It was incredible.
When I went in there, I was just blown away by the ambiance. You go in the foyer and there's always French pastries laid out right there. Nice big wine room. The china was the same china Jack Lee Kennedy Onassis used. It'd be big chandeliers from some century in France, and I just, where am I at? And I went in there and I was really impressed. They showed me around, they showed me the menus, they showed me the kitchen, where the garde-manger was, which I didn't know what a garde-manger was at the time, which is the salad guy. But cold desserts, stuff like that, and the legumier and the sous chef and all these things I had to learn. And it was like going to school.
We had high aspirations, and we didn't want to be a good restaurant in Pittsburgh or even a great restaurant in Pittsburgh. We wanted to be a great restaurant.
Everybody was so dedicated. Everybody was always trying to outdo each other. We used to do wine tastings. We used to sit down in the afternoon, pour, smell, taste, try to figure out what one was, and it was really creative for the time.
You know, you get to try it, you get to taste the wine, taste the food, and describe it to people. And if you do it with enough passion, you'll be very successful with it. And that's what they taught me, that you have to have a passion for it. And from the get-go, when I walked the Le Monde, you know, my passion grew tenfold.
Remember back in that time, in the late 1970s, early 1980s, there weren't fresh herbs in America. You couldn't go to the supermarket and buy tarragon. It came in, it dried in a can. That was it. Fresh herbs were parsley. And the choice was flat or curly. That was it. There was one kind of mushroom. If I said mushrooms, then everybody would know I was talking the plural form of white button mushrooms. There was no chanterelles, morels, and we were able to bring all these things in. We also started to interact with the purveyors differently, right from the get-go. We would go daily down to the Strip District and started to engage with the guys that sold produce or the people in the fish markets. We were down in the coolers with them, digging through the fish to pick out the perfect sea bass or the salmon. And they thought we were crazy. They really did. And I said, well, how does, you know, so-and-so do it? You know, they're big customers. We never even met them. They called the orders in off the phone, you know, send me 100 pounds of scrod. We wanted different kinds of chickens. We found sources for fresh venison. And it took us a long time to do that, and it was a lot of hard work.
When I got there, Kathy Arnberger was in charge, but you also had Janine Sipko, Chris Sherm, and a gentleman from Russia named Tony. I can't remember his name, big guy, but they knew their stuff.
Kathy was the chef. She was actually, I think, one of the best chefs I ever worked with. Never gave me any problem. Just freedom, that's all. That was easy with her. Do whatever you want, as long as it's good, it sells. Oh yeah, that was Rubens. That was the main boss. He had this nice handwriting. You see that? Look at those prices. Holy cow, that was in the 80s.
Yeah, I made some money.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you did.
When they gave me a menu to read, they could see I was overwhelmed. They just pronounce anything you can. And I said, print it in USA. And they thought that was very witty, and I just wanted to know, when can I start, because I wanted to learn it. And my persistence paid off, and I was with them for years and years, and spun off to other restaurants like Tony Pice's restaurant Bon Vivant. I was a captain there for a while. Again, learning more about Portuguese cuisine, Portuguese wines, with a little bit of his knowledge of Northern Italian and French as well.
To be in this business, you have to be crazy and or love it or be crazy. But if you do both, you'll be successful. So in 1992, we looked for a little space and we found a space that was very, very popular in the city, and we opened Bon Vivant. It was a success from day one. We opened the doors and people, they start to come like crazy. They start to rave about the food because the restaurant was so different, the food was so different. And I was just doing what I really love to do.
When I graduated from high school, I asked Tony if I could have a job at Bon Vivant. It was just a place that, well, it was the best restaurant in town, and I wanted a job as a server to make some money, and he offered me a job in the back as a part-time prep cook, which I don't know why he did it. I mean, I know that I wouldn't have been a good server, and so but I don't know why he offered me a job at all. I can only think he must just be the nicest person ever. You know, I had no professional restaurant experience. I was working in a very small kitchen. I think a writer compared it to the inside of a Buick. My first station that I was working at was a sheet pan on top of a trash can with the cutting board on top of it. Like, that's all the space they had for me.
Oh my God, it was like a closet. I mean, but it was a small seated restaurant. We only sat, including upstairs, maybe 50 to 60 at one time. And even though it was really small and some narrow steps carrying some tables, it worked out great because as far as I'm concerned, Tony, he taught me more than anybody in the restaurant. That gentleman, he doesn't know, not only know the kitchen, but he knows how to treat guests, how to make the night run smoothly. even if you're in the weeds, you can't tell that from a customer's point of view. And always finish strong, baby, finish strong. That's what he always said, finish strong, baby. And that's what, because the last thing they take with them, you know, is a good feeling about the restaurant. It's going to stick with them.
All of the chefs who were like the scene had come out of this French restaurant. Andrea Schrank, who's a pastry chef, Michael and Candice Uricchio. Michael Uricchio is a chef and restaurateur, and Candice is his wife. She's a pastry chef. Tony Pice, who Bon Vivant, they all had come out of that restaurant, and that had been like the scene, and they all had their own businesses and restaurants going on, but it was all sort of very classical and very old. And not that what they were doing was bad, it just was, you know, coming out of a classical French restaurant background, not bringing in a lot of flavors of other places in the world. And it was in Pittsburgh, and so like, you know, doing French cuisine in Normandy or in Paris is different than doing French cuisine in Pittsburgh. I mean, what you could get here, and still what you can get here as far as product, is not what it is elsewhere. You know, and it's still, I mean, we're light years from San Francisco and you know, Eastern Spain, and we're light years from that in product. So it was kind of a conservative restaurant world, and you know, the founders of Big Burrito came with this Mad Mex concept, which is like this like very not Mexican thing. You know, it's lighter food, fresh grilled, no lard, lots of vegetables, lots of made to order, lots of scratch.
The first time I ever remember going into a restaurant in Pittsburgh that felt different was when I was in high school in the 90s. Mad Mex opened in Oakland. And I'll never forget that experience. It was just this little teeny tiny place, which is still there today. They had very low lighting, which my parents loved the place, but always complained that they could never read the menu because it was so dark in there. But I remember that, oh, wow, this is kind of neat. You know, this is kind of a fun, you know, fun thing.
When I joined, you know, like I said, they were getting ready to open Mad Mex number 3, which is where Kaya ended up, and we went on a trip, you know, because we like to take trips to get ideas, and we went on some trips, and it was right around where like Miami cuisine was hot, and we're like, that sounds great, that'll be fun, it'll be great. And so before we got too far along, we redirected the Mad Mexes, and it came out as Kaya. We did some research, cookbook research, traveling research, and put together this menu of things with, you know, fresh mangoes and hot peppers and lots of seafood, and Pittsburgh found it really exciting. You know, we were doing with small plates. I mean, we invented tropical tapas. Tapas is what we call the small plates. You know, we're doing small plates, and it's 1995, and we're bringing in, you know, boniatos and malangas, which are root vegetables from the tropics that you couldn't get here. Quickly after Kaya opened, we were looking at the location for Casbah, which is in Shadyside, and you know, I said, I want that. I was the sous chef at Kaya, and you know, the Casbah thinks that's going to be my restaurant. I'll do that. I want to do that. And you know, that concept became Mediterranean. And you know, what's Mediterranean mean? It's seafood, fresh vegetables, bright flavors, light preparations, lots of like, you know, we said Mediterranean, but all I was thinking was Northern California. I mean, like, all I was thinking was Northern California, because it's the same. You know, Northern California and Spain, France, Italy, it's the same climate. It's ocean, it's wine, it's beach, it's olive groves, it's citrus trees. And so that's sort of how Casbah came out. And it was super exciting. You know, it was just like, it was just new. And one of the things that we did, too, is we spent a ton of money to build these restaurants. Like, we got a high design, high quality finish, excellent lighting, beautiful fixtures and furnitures, nice art. Like, you know, we get art from a lot of local artists to help do the stuff, and we made these beautiful restaurants. And it, you know, not that Cafe Allegro or Bon Vivant weren't pretty restaurants, but this was a concept. This was a look, a feel that ties the music, the dining room, the food, the booze all together. And that hadn't really happened here in Pittsburgh.
5 years ago, you know, the options seemed pretty limited. It didn't seem like there was a whole lot going on. And if you wanted to go to a nice restaurant, you had to go to, you know, you had to go to 11, or you had to go to Casbah, you had to go to Kaya, you had to go to Soba or Umi. Like, those were the good restaurants. Those were your options if you wanted to get something upscale. Like, they, you know, Big Burrito nailed it. Like, they got the ambiance, they've got the cuisine, they've got, you know, locally sourced product, they've got high-end product.
It's been successful from the beginning. We'd have broken even a lot earlier if we were better operators. Like the way we operate now versus the way we operated in 1995 and 96, we're so much more profitable now. We're so much more efficient. So if we were opening those restaurants these days, you know, it would be much better. But they were busy from the beginning. And one of the things we did is we opened 7 days a week, you know. And every restaurant in Pittsburgh was closed on Sundays and Mondays. To go out to eat, and it's still, like, if I want to go out to eat, and I don't want to go to one of our restaurants on a Sunday night, it's still hard to do. There's not a lot of places to go. And then there was nothing except fast food or pizza joints. And so Sundays at Casbah were often our second busiest day. Saturday was always the busiest, but often Sunday was the second busiest day because people wanted to go out to eat on Sunday. Like, they want to go out Sunday night. They don't, you know, tomorrow's the work day. They've been running around all day. They just want to go get some dinner.
Influentially, I mean, Bill was, I didn't learn to cook from Bill, but I learned how to run a restaurant from Bill. You know, the running the machine is a whole different thing. It's a whole different skill set, and obviously Big Burrito's really good at it.
You can definitely tell when somebody has worked for Big Burrito. Like, I have hired cooks, and I can definitely tell. They have a way of doing things, and they have an efficient way of doing it. So they're like definitely training people to, like, work efficiently.
There's a language that, you know, in restaurants, everybody speaks a language.
When you 86 something, that means you're out of it. So if I'm running the kitchen and I tell the servers, hey, 86 the lamb, we're out of lamb, we have no more.
One of our former chefs, when it was time for him to go home at night, he would say, 86 Nick. He would 86 himself.
Behind you, Grant. You're working in very close quarters where everything is sharp and on fire. Like, so you have to communicate your movements to the guy next to you.
If you're behind someone, you say behind.
Behind, underneath, swinging left, swinging right.
Black Hawk down, or
Black Hawk down, hot behind.
Hot behind, I will burn you.
I will burn you.
And you don't even realize that you're saying it after a time. You're constantly announcing your movements to anybody who might be near you. Up high, you know, going down low, coming down the line.
When you hear someone scream corner, you just need to kind of hunker down and wait until they pass you.
You know, if somebody orders something well done, you say kill it, burn it.
The weeds, the weeds is a big one. And that's when you're buried, when you're not necessarily over your head, but you're getting there.
You're backed up, you're sinking.
There's more going on my station right now that I can physically handle. And if I don't get help or pull myself out of these weeds, I'm going to crash the service, which is the worst thing you can possibly do, is crash the service. All it takes is one station going down in flames to bring the whole kitchen to a screeching halt.
Chop 203, 2 chops, duck, half crack, half gnocchi. Half crack, half 5 all day.
All day we need 9 lambs, 7 ribeye, 4 turbo, 6 salmon. So all day means like everything that you have ordered.
Dine in the window. If you put something up and a server's not picking up, I gotta play dine in the window.
People will talk about like a little plastic container as a crabbo. And that's a Big Burrito thing as far as I know. And you have people who come in and from other cities to work for you, and they don't call it that, and it takes them a while to understand and get used to it.
CRABBO. The reason it's called a crabbo is because I brought the name to Pittsburgh because when I was cooking in DC, crab meat would come fresh in 1-pound containers with lids that are shaped just like deli containers. And we called them crabbos. So when we started doing restaurants here, you know, we would save the crab containers, the crabos, and store stuff in them. You know, you got a little bit of picked herbs, whatever, we'd store stuff in them. And so the walk-ins and the coolers would be full of stacks of the crabos. So crab meat comes in cans now. It doesn't come in the plastic containers anymore. But if you buy 16-ounce deli containers and put stuff in them, which everybody in town does, everybody calls them crabos. Because if you don't call it a crabo, nobody knows what to call it.
Where burrito had established a really unprecedented movement in the establishment of concepts and branding and all of that kind of thing, and they really started becoming a magnet restaurant program to develop new talent and sort of get people out and eating and psyched about the food scene. And after a while, some of that talent took that inertia and wanted to move off into their own concepts. Everybody just wanted to take the best of what they knew and turn it into something as cool as they thought that it needed to be for themselves.
In the early 2000s, restaurants started to pop up. You know, the first one that came to mind, probably mid 2000s, would have been, Legume was like the first independent that was doing like cool shit. And, Trevitt kind of has his own spin on bistro food, and it's very much his identity. I mean, it's his food. When you eat at, you know his food.
This is our apple box. So when I was a young cook, learning how to cook and working in restaurants, I quickly learned that if I smoked cigarettes, I could take breaks. And if I didn't smoke cigarettes, the chef would come out and be like, "What the hell are you doing?" So we have this apple box here, which is for anybody who wants to maybe not develop a smoking habit. I don't have much hope that it's going to help anyone quit, but maybe it'll help someone from starting. This is pretty much the heart of Legume, and this is our meat locker. So just about everything in here is from Western Pennsylvania. Some things that aren't. This is back fat from D'Artagnan. It's hormone, antibiotic-free, Berkshire pig. Pork bellies. We make our own bacon, but the pork bellies aren't local. Just about everything else here is from Pennsylvania. Lamb, beef, duck, all Pennsylvania. This is actually, I lied. This is the heart of Legume, not the meat locker. So these are all things that we've preserved. Where to begin? This right here is very special to me. This is shaker dried corn, and this is sweet corn that has been dehydrated by these Amish farmers in Somerset. They have a corn dehydrator that they put right on top of their stove. It's about a 24-hour process. So we went into Legume with this idea that we wanted to source as much as we could locally, and I had just been in California for the previous 5 years, and I kind of got used to a lot of availability. Even though I grew up in Maine and cooked professionally in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and Boston before I went to California, I still came back for some reason with this idea that there was more produce here than there really was all during the year. So we worked with different farmers to form relationships with them. We do a tremendous amount of pickling, canning, fermentation, and these are all ways of trying to serve local foods year round. Like right now, it's the middle of December. We have 5 vegetable sides. They're all from Western Pennsylvania, and we're able to do that because of fermentation.
what we're missing here in a lot of ways is a sense of history. Like the big burrito forward generation, you see that more. So you see someone like Derek Stevens, who maybe in the public eye doesn't get as much acclaim as he should. In the restaurant community, gets a lot of acclaim, and he's someone that people really look up to because he's kind of been around for a long time. But I think if you look pre-Big Burrito, I think that history isn't talked about as much, and I think that's a shame. We're celebrating all this stuff that's happening now. I love history, and I think to not know the full story and where everything came from is detrimental.
The restaurant industry in general does a terrible job in documenting its own history. And so either things are forgotten or these myths that are third and fourth and fifth hand kind of develop.
I worked at Le Palmier for a really long time. It was around for 25 or 7 years or something like that. People today still come here to Thin Man Sandwich Shop and talk about Le Palmier. We use their chicken liver mousse recipe in our sandwich, the Thin Man signature, and we also sell containers of it, which is something we used to do at Le Palmier. And every time an old customer discovers that we have it or has been coming in and says, you know, it's so good, it reminds me every time of going to Le Palmier, and that place was so fantastic. It's never good to forget your past, whether it's in a restaurant or not. Everything we have now is built on that. I think the majority of the people cooking in this city right now came from a time when those restaurants were still around and a lot of us cooked in them.
Your restaurants like Lamont, Common Plea, those were top of the triangle for a long time. Jake's on the Square. And these were restaurants that marked Pittsburgh through the 80s and were the place to go. And a lot of those have closed.
The restaurateurs were the personalities of the restaurant, and people would flock to that. You know, when I wasn't there at the restaurant, people felt bad that I wasn't there because they wanted to see me. So that was another uniqueness of the 80s and 90s, you know.
For a long time, you would go to a restaurant because of the restaurant, because of the name on the restaurant, and because you like things, but you wouldn't necessarily know who's in the kitchen. People went to restaurants because they felt comfortable, they liked the service. They probably even liked the owner who was out shaking hands in the front. And I think now, this is definitely a trend nationally, that it's either chef owners or chefs that have business partners, but the business partners are kind of just in the back.
The big thing is when I was in business, the media was only newspapers, TV, okay, radio. Now it exploded with the internet and, you know, the emails and what have you. So you have to do different marketing today, totally different marketing. Where, you know, when I was there, I marketed the restaurant through, you know, newspaper articles, radio, television, you know, billboards, you know, airplanes.
Yeah, I mean, social media is a huge part of it, and it's, you know, I know a lot of us have been kind of hesitant to take it up, but it's a way of the world now. I mean, people want that instant connectivity.
How much time do you spend focusing on the product that you're creating and really creating the business and making sure that everything is perfect there? And how much time do you spend telling everyone that your place is perfect and that you're focusing on the product?
And so a lot of people have had to adapt, and some of the kind of older restaurants and, you know, chefs that have been around and been doing it, been keeping their, you know, their seats full every day, you know, get kind of left in the dust a little bit, because it's a world of, you know, I want to show everybody the next magazine article that I'm in, you know, and so that's interesting to people. They want to read that, and if you're not in the social media kind of hemisphere, then people forget about you, and it's a shame because those guys have been doing it. I mean, you know, like Trevor referenced, Cafe Zeno is a wonderful place. I mean, it's just such a beautiful, fun little restaurant, and it's hard for me to think of a restaurant that has been maybe left out that's more of a better example than that. I mean, Tony Pais is, I mean, the restaurants that he did and things that he was doing, interesting food, however many years ago. I don't know exactly how long Zeno's been around, but it's around for a long time. And it doesn't get the love that maybe it should. I think people are realizing that and kind of stepping in to say, well, don't forget about this guy, don't, you know, and so it's a small community. Everybody looks out for each other. Or, you know, there's plenty of room for all of those restaurants in the city. Nobody wants to succeed at the expense of another restaurant failing. It's just, you see people put their whole lives and everything on the line, and then to see them fail is you know, terrible. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
The tradition of independent chef-owned restaurants, and I'm thinking of restaurants like Le Palmier, Cafe Zigno, Joe Nolan. I don't think he owned the restaurant, but he was the chef of Cafe Allegro. They were like the best restaurant for 10 years. And why don't we hear about Cafe Allegro anymore? A lot of it has to do with who from that period of time still has a social media presence.
My old man and my grandfather owned a Italian-American diner kind of restaurant in McKees Rocks from 1960 to 1980, mid-60s to 1980, catered to steel workers and you know, the railroad workers when the steel industry was booming. It burned down in '79. Late '79, early 1980. When I was a kid, I you know, in kindergarten, I remember being in the kitchen, you know, hanging out with the dishwashers and the prep cooks, and you know, just being around that. So after that, you know, financially, our family went through a lot of hard times. We were, you know, not very well off. Pretty, you know, struggled just like a lot of people in McKees Rocks did. When the steel industry collapsed, and you know, downtown McKees Rocks went to shit, but we always were around food. So, you know, my dad was a cook, my grandfather was a chef, my mom was a waitress. The last thing I wanted to do was be in the restaurant business. You know, it didn't leave scars, but it was just, you know, it wasn't romanticized in my upbringing because it was tough. You know, it was a tough business. It never really paid off financially, and it just struggled. But, so I went to art school a couple times, dropped out from a couple different schools because, you know, I was working myself through art school. Most of those jobs working through art school were, you know, working at crappy hoagie joints, pizza places. In the summers, I would go to Ocean City, Maryland, and work at Thrasher's French Fries. And I did that for probably too long. I would work in the summer a lot. And then in the winter, I would travel and just kind of collect unemployment. So I went to culinary school, and I was really good at it. It took, you know, just the work ethic and what it takes to kind of be good at it. It's not like there are these, I guess there are probably these prodigy cooks, but pretty much, you know, to be a good cook, you just have to want to be a good cook. Did my externship out in Phoenix, Arizona, at a resort. Actually, right outside of Phoenix. It's called Carefree, Arizona. The name of the resort was the Boulders. It was a really high-end, you know, 5-star, 5-diamond resort. I learned a lot about, you know, classical French charcuterie and, you know, just basic high-end restaurant techniques and cuisine. Moved back to Pittsburgh, worked at the Duquesne Club, senior saucier, rounds person. So I kind of worked every station. And from the, you know, there's only so far you can go at the Duquesne Club unless you're management, because it's a union house. It's very old school, and I didn't want to be in the same position for 20 years. So, you know, I then took a position with Big Burrito Restaurant Group in 2001 as a line cook at Soba, knowing that the company was growing and knowing that they were doing a lot of stuff. And it was about 3 months in, I got the opportunity to take over as chef at Kaya. So I went from line cook to chef like overnight, and just, it was, you know, kind of baptism by fire as far as managing a place goes. And then I went and took a position as the chef at Soba for a couple years. And from there I went to open the DoubleTree Hotel downtown with the Bigelow Grill, was the name of the restaurant. And I did that because I wanted the opportunity to open a place and be a part of that and see how that went down, because the long-term goal was ultimately to open my own place. So I figured I'd learn how to do it on someone else's dollar. You know, that went really well. I was there for about 4 years. I had the opportunity to do some experimental stuff, and you know, this is kind of the peak of the molecular gastronomy movement in like 2005, 6, 7. So I did this this project called Alchemy. I pitched it to the general manager and the kind of supervisor of the management group who took over the hotel. Some people that really knew and had traveled well and knew what was going on in the culinary scene around the world. And they said, go for it. And, you know, I mean, I had to cook for them. I prepared, I think, 16 courses for them. They were all very small. You know, some of them were very experimental in technique. Some of them were very experimental in flavor pairings. But it was fun, and you know, I was obviously borrowing from a lot of different people that were doing things around the planet. And I think at the same time, you know, myself and Robert Sayer, who was my sous chef at the time, we were, you know, coming up with quite a few things of our own that were very original and, you know, we're very proud of.
It was day by day, little by little, but he would communicate little ideas, little concepts that they were doing. The liquid centered peas, the sodium alginate calcium chloride technique, where it's an encapsulated something and then you put it in your mouth and it breaks open, or things that were temperature developed, or sous vide cooking, or like thermocirculators and having liquid nitrogen around the house, and all of those kinds of things. They leaked in one by one. It wasn't something that happened like one day he goes out and spends $10,000 on a whole bunch of stuff. No, it was like play by play, little by little, let's sneak in one little thing and play with it and see what it does, or let's see what I want to do with it. He would have ideas for the pierogi of the future, and it would be pierogi Dippin' Dots, one by one, dropped into a bath of liquid nitrogen, scoop them out, put them in the little container, and then garnish them with chives, and as soon as they hit your palate and melted, it was delicious. The pistachio pudding was one of the most extraordinary things ever. It went on the bison, it was so good. But vegetable leathers, fruit leathers, yeah, there are foams. I mean, there's foams. I mean, come on, but it's not just for decoration. We had foams, we had smokes. We didn't have good luck with vapor. There was just a difficulty in trying to deliver that to table side. But one thing that it did, having Alchemy and having had a really successful couple of year run with a molecular gastronomy tasting, is that it gave people the freedom to explore some of those concepts for themselves and do exactly what Kevin had done for himself. Go get a thermocirculator. Start checking out sous vide. See what it does for you. Use some transglutaminase to stick a piece of like fish to a piece of chicken, or like make your own sausage in your kitchen or whatever. Those things, it just kind of gave it a free run to do whatever you wanted to. So people became a little more, you could be proud of a multi-elemental presentation and not just put parsley on top to make it fancy, and find your own way to do that. And I feel like that the fine dining game got upped.
It was really well received in the Pittsburgh area. You know, I mean, 2 years in a row we were voted as one of the best restaurants in Pittsburgh Magazine. Not for the Bigelow Grill, but simply for the Alchemy menu, which was kind of unprecedented. You know, take that for what it's worth. And from there, so we kind of hit the end. I started to get really anxious to do my own thing towards the end of my run at the Bigelow Grill and the DoubleTree. And you know, a gentleman made a call to me from a restaurant that is now closed, and made me an offer that seemed too good to be true. Basically wanted me to do my food in his space, kind of as a partnership. Turns out the restaurant that I'm gonna keep unnamed, was on its way down. and he was kind of grasping at straws to try and figure out something to save his business. Wasn't really interested in my food. He had never eaten my food, contrary to what he told me. And that experience, which lasted 3 months, you know, I left a really secure, great-paying job to go to this, and it just fell apart. My paycheck started to bounce. The whole thing kind of just went in the crapper, and that was it. And then I said, I won't ever work for anyone again. And that's kind of when that was late 2008. I decided that I was going to try and figure out how to do my own thing, and that was when I, you know, basically scribbled down on a couple pieces of scrap paper, paper towels like that were in the kitchen. You know, my idea for Salt of the Earth, and, you know, open floor plan, open kitchen, communal tables, chalkboard menu, operating on a very kind of day-to-day basis as far as what was available in the market and locally.
When Salt opened, it was a very unique thing, and Kevin was very big into exploration and molecular gastronomy, and Salt pushed the envelope in a lot of different capacities, not having menus or paper menus available, using fun experimental cooking techniques, going into an area that was completely underserved and a little sketchy, and so it was very unique and just really captured a lot of people when that happened.
When we opened, I was the maitre d', and it was so packed. Every night that we were open, and we were closed on Sundays, but on Fridays and Saturdays, there would be already a line when we opened at 5 o'clock, and it never slowed down until, I mean, we were open till like 1-ish, you know, sometimes later, and would be busy. And I was taking reservations. I made the cutoff for 3 months out, and they filled up immediately.
You know, 4 o'clock, the curtains were closed on those large windows, and you just see shadows just slowly, like, appearing. You just see like more and more shadows, and it was just like this, almost like a scene from like a Walking Dead episode or something like that.
We were getting press, inquiries all the time. We had famous people filming movies here coming in. Like, I hung out with Maggie Gyllenhaal for a half an hour one time, where she and Peter Sarsgaard and their daughter were waiting for a table, just sitting on a bench waiting for a table.
I still remember like the first time when like I went in, and it was like nothing else in Pittsburgh, like all the guys like so cool, like dressing like the t-shirts and like the bar and Maggie behind the bar, like those are things that were so new to Pittsburgh. Like, it was like people getting adjusted to like, well, this is also fine dining, like the casual, the communal dining.
I would go down to Urban Tree Forge and work with Jim Ladner, who was commissioned to design the communal tables and the stools that are down there. So I got to do the finish sanding on all of those, and we all moved them into the space when it was time. We moved them in together. And bolted them together one last time, finally, which was a relief because those things weigh 1 million pounds.
It's the environment, everything about that place was very eye-opening and totally exhilarating. And I've had some of the best nights in my kitchen career working in that kitchen. I made a lot of friends at that dining bar. A lot of acquaintances. And I think it was good for the people too. Seeing like the people making their food, someone that may see you in the street and be like, oh man, that dude's covered in tattoos, he's probably a scumbag, but then you see like this person that you may judge on the street is actually preparing this phenomenal meal for you, and someone that may have a biased attitude towards someone like that, and they come in dinner and they're just blown away by like the talent and the amount of effort and work and everything that goes into working a service in that restaurant. It's really eye-opening for someone that may have a bias or prejudice towards, the tattooed culture.
Pittsburgh's on the cusp of this wonderful kind of explosion of the food scene where the clientele, the community is really getting behind it, and the energy to me is everyone is embracing it, and so there's a lot of people working together.
There's been a sea change in restaurants, just in diversity. You know, I could not find, you know, decent Asian food, you know, in '99. Now we have, you know, Squirrel Hill. It's a great little enclave for like great Asian food. Then if you go to Monroeville, there's great Indian food, you know, so we're getting there. And then, you know, we're starting to see Mexican food coming in, you know, in Brookline and in all those little neighborhoods. So restaurants have really changed. opened this place March 2013. Pretty much a success story here according to my landlord. So today we are cooking curry chicken and rice and cabbage. I use electric pots. I'm limited with kitchen space. This is I think the smallest kitchen you'll ever see. I have onions and I'll add some garlic. I'll put some vegetable oil. I like using vegetable oils to cook my food. I really don't use too much measuring. We don't do too much measuring in Africa anyways. The onions are almost brown. Then the next thing we're gonna do is I already cut up the chicken and washed it. I'm using chicken quarters. You can use any type of chicken you choose. No problem, it take approximately 2 hours to cook it. It'll be tender, all the flavor will get inside the chicken. Even at home, I don't want to use my stove. This works much better. And I have probably like about 60 pieces of chicken in here. So it carries quite a lot of chicken. I like flavor. I like using different ingredients. I like tasteful food. I hate bland food. So I put pretty much everything in my food. This is a curry paste that I like to use. So I basically use like 3 types of curry in my food. And all these, after all it boils together, it will give it such great flavor. I love it. It's my passion. It's always been since I was a kid. We owned a restaurant in Kenya. My dad and my mom, they also came from a background of cooking where my grandfather was a chef too. And I think it's just like in our blood. Like I just followed. My sister owns a guest house and she cooks there too. So it's a family thing. We enjoy cooking. We enjoy interacting and sharing a meal to us. It brings people close together. So I wanted to bring a little bit of Kenyan taste into the Pittsburgh area and hope people embrace it as they have.
I was going to school up in Erie. I was in Korea for a little while. I moved to LA for almost 4 years, and then I came back to do this with my mom. So it's kind of amazing how much the city's actually changed in the course of, the glimpses that I got whenever I would just come back and visit my family. On any given night, you can pretty much get anything that you want. Yeah, between like CMU and Pitt and the programs that they have going on there, I mean, it brings in a lot of students from Korea. The thing about Korea is that it was consistently being invaded from like China and Japan. So I think that had like a substantial influence on our food, but I think Korean cuisine is still very inherently different from like Chinese or Japanese. It's a lot more spiced and flavorful, and I think that came out of like a need to preserve food longer. You pretty much get everything out of like one product. So soy is a really easy crop to grow. It's pretty sustainable. It's not like fickle. It's pretty disease resistant as well. You can grow a lot of it. So they would pack that into blocks, and out of that they would get like the soybean paste, but that also produces soy sauce as well. And then you take that and you can add it as like a binding agent into like hot pepper paste and things like that. So it was kind of just condensing what they had and making the most out of it. The soy sauce is used in fermenting like kimchi or helping with the fermentation process of making kimchi. You can pretty much turn anything into kimchi, and it's just salting it, putting some hot pepper in it, and that's it. Letting it kind of sit for a little while, get a little funky, and eat it.
If you think about where restaurants come from, in other words, like, why do we have restaurants, right? I'm the academic, right? Why do we have venues where people can eat out, and why do they look the way they do? And to me, it's very much, there's 2 different sort of traditions, and one is fine dining, right? And the other is food and ethnic and working class enclaves, right? In particular for working people, or for people who migrate here and don't have food at home that matches up with what they are familiar with from where they're coming from. And Pittsburgh is a great example of that, right? I mean, what struck me living here is the fact that Eastern European, countries and ethnicities are still clear-cut and vibrant here in a way that they're not in a lot of other cities, unless you have a second wave of migration coming, post-Soviet era or something like that. If you look at a lot of other cities, not Pittsburgh, what you see is
ethnic migration in, and what Krishnendu Ray calls ethnic succession in restaurants, right? That in other words, these ethnic restaurants, the ones that do well, appeal to that community, but they also appeal to others, right? It's not a closed enclave. And those restaurants also become kind of the cool place to eat, the interesting place, the exotic. My favorite example of that is New York Jews and Chinese food, right? So why, of all the different kinds of ethnic enclaves and foods in New York, why do New York Jews gravitate towards Chinese food? Why does it become something that's their own? Well, one, sometimes the flavors match up with kind of what they're used to from Eastern European. Two, it's a little bit exotic, right? They're just one step up on the ethnic ladder of succession there. And three, the things that were problematic in other restaurants, like pork, or kind of things that aren't kosher, mixing meat and milk, aren't as obvious or present in these Chinese restaurants. So you can call it safe trafe, right? You can eat it. And then I think you see that repeated in a lot of different places, right? People adapt and they adopt. And so it might be still relevant to the ethnic group whose cuisine it is, but it's also relevant to a larger customer base.
Pittsburgh's immigrant population for a long time was stagnant, right? So you weren't getting a ton of people moving here in the same way that you were in some other cities. And so it took a while for it to catch up with restaurants that weren't of this old Pittsburgh tradition.
So a lot of people would say that we're behind, right? Like that would be one way of expressing it. We're behind because we didn't have those waves of migration. And I think, with that kind of decline in the steel industry, you didn't see people moving here. There wasn't anything for the people here to do, much less somebody, some ethnic group coming in. But so you see a little of it in the sense, like if I look on the Strip District and you see that these Italian groceries and stores are supplemented and supported and continue to function in that kind of Strip District way because of the Asian grocery stores and because of the Asian restaurants that are coming in. So they're not supplanting it, they're supplementing it, but there aren't those big waves. And I don't know that you're gonna see that here. And so the question is, what do you, what happens? What kind of neighborhoods? And to me, it's less rooted in ethnicity and more rooted in the actual neighborhood itself.
So the first thing that we do is we marinate the meat overnight, like the ribs. So this will be marinating overnight. Come in, lace the grills up. These two are chicken grills. This is chicken grill. He brought all the chickens off, and turkey ribs. So after we marinate them, get the grills lit up, get them hot, come out here and line up. All these grills will be going at one time. And since we got some pork eaters and some people that don't eat pork, those two are specifically for chicken and turkey ribs. These two are specifically for ribs. So once we do that, and we get that going, while that's going, then we come inside, we start our sides. And right now, mainly everything in here is made from scratch. So these are the greens. This is sauce for mac and cheese, because we make it from scratch. So that's sauce for mac and cheese. And this is a finished product. This is a small pan. This will hold us over till we can make more. You know what I mean? Like if she runs out, that's a small pan of mac. And this is chicken. This will go on the line. From here, it'll go to the warmer, and from there, from the warmer to the line. You go here. All your backup ribs, those ribs that's out there, will go in here. And from here to the line. So that way it can maintain the proper temperature. Those are turkey ribs. And if you haven't had one of these are delicious. They're excellent. I mean, they're nice and juicy, and it's all meat, as you can see. All meat. These are yams. They're made from scratch. And that's the mac. We do about, in the winter, we'll do about 3 to 4 cases in the winter. In the summer, we're doing roughly around 7 cases, between 7 and 8 cases. So in the winter, we really don't have to reboot, but in the summer, we have to reboot the grills. So it takes a little longer, you know what I mean? But I mean, we get it off, we're up, we're running. A lot of days we sell out. A lot of days we have to reboot the grills and start over again, especially in the summer.
This is the old restaurant. We started about 40 years ago, this restaurant, and we be the same location 40 years. Oh yeah, I saw a lot of change. About 40 years, we be the other restaurant. There's not too many restaurants. Now every single door is the restaurant. And but of course we see the change. There are a lot of hotels open, new one. The PNC banks, all the stuff, the apartment, people come downtown, live. We have the special dessert. They got Jackie Onassis dessert because I cooked for Jackie Onassis for 3 years on the Onassis yacht. And that's the favorite dessert. Okay, we started. We put it just a little bit water, that much. Put 2 eggs. I told you we put 2 eggs. We put a little bit almond, vanilla. A little bit olive oil. A little bit. 1 teaspoon, that's all. We put the rice flour, rice. We stir. And this is Jackie au dessert. We bake for 45 minutes. And then we soak with a little bit honey, a little bit. And then they come like this.
One of the changes that you've seen happening in downtown Pittsburgh is it's starting to get back to the way it was. It's becoming more of an 18-hour area and probably will work its way into becoming a full 24-hour area as well. Part of the reason is people aren't leaving at 5 o'clock, getting in a car and going somewhere else. In fact, in many cases, people are coming into town after 5. And a big part of that has been a restaurant revolution occurring in downtown.
In particular, you're looking at the things that Rick DeChance and Tolga Spetic are doing with Meat and Potatoes, with Butcher in the Rye, with Taco, and then what Matt Porco and his team are doing with Siena Mercado and Siena Sala Plaza and Market Square. They're both building these really open, accessible places that are really raising the bar of quality for people that were maybe already going downtown or not being attracted to downtown. They're not per se attracting people that are like, I want to go to a place that you're sourcing things from farmers, but you go to Mezzo, say, in Siena Mercado, and they're sourcing whole animals from really great farms. And I think that's just, it's stepping up the game for everyone downtown. It's stepping up the game for everyone in Pittsburgh. And then with Meat and Potatoes and Butcher and Taco, you know, they're building these beautiful bars too. And they're building, I mean, Butcher in the Rye is a world-class bar. It's a world-class bar team. It's a beautiful bar. And I think that's really exciting. I think it becomes this place where it's a destination now. And if you're going to see a play or the ballet or the opera, you want to stay downtown. If you're working downtown, you want to stay downtown for happy hour.
I have walked in downtown prior before, but I've seen a lot of change when it comes to diversity. People are willing to try things, yeah, and that. We get that a lot on Grand Street, but I think people are open-minded to trying different things. Downtown area has a good variety of restaurants from different continents, and it's a beautiful thing to have diversity in Pittsburgh.
Starting in places like Penn Avenue in the Cultural District and in Market Square, you're now seeing it shift throughout the entire area. And our goal is to see the entire Golden Triangle and all the way into the Strip District and across into the South Side and over into the North Shore and up into Lawrenceville. And the connectivity of all of it be a place where people are coming to be able to go to have a good meal.
Like wiring the music. There's like 4 different phone lines, half of which were dead, and like everything like that. And just finding all this different shit.
My advice of opening a restaurant is if you think it's this day, take 3 to 4 months and add it on to that, because it's never going to open up on time. If you have your budget, make sure that you over budget, because it's never going to be what you think it's going to be. It's always going to be more.
So the upper end, you can easily get into the 7 figures. The average is about $495,000 to open a restaurant in the U.S., and you know that includes all your startup costs. So the average construction costs is around $350,000. You know, the average cost of equipment just for the equipment is over $100,000. If you're looking at trying to put together those financing sources, and you don't have enough to bootstrap it, get money from friends, family, yourself, from your personal savings, then you have to look at some other options like going to a bank or getting investors.
If you don't have a name, then it's harder. Like if you're just some Joe Schmo and like, hey, I want to do this restaurant, then you actually have to do a lot more research and be like, I have, you know, I never owned a restaurant before and I want to open a restaurant. Well, you need the business plan, you need the demographic, you need to make sure that you look like you know what you're doing. The other aspect of it is that once you start getting a reputation, they look at Twitter followers, they look at Instagram followers, they look at Facebook followers. It's, you know, I didn't know about that because, you know, when I did this, you know, Twitter and Facebook was like kind of newish. And now my friend Bread and Salt said that when he went to go look for a loan, they said, oh, well, you know, we're more inclined to give you a loan because you have a lot of Twitter followers, which blows my mind, but that just says that there's a following behind you. So social media is a huge part of it.
The restaurant industry has such a high failure rate, and banks don't really want to take a chance, even though they're proven talent and they have great ideas. There's so much reluctance to finance a restaurant.
Depending on who you ask, 60 to 80%. Some sources cite up to 90% failure rate of restaurants. The first step is finding a space in the city.
And then you got to look at your area of what people want. And will this idea work for this neighborhood? You have to look at taxes, if they're mostly family oriented, if they're, you know, even if they're wealthy, they still, you know, people, if they're being taxed by their kids and the city, they're not going to want to eat at a fine dining place 3 times a week or 1 time a week or 1 time a month even.
And then there's a whole long involved process of
designing the kitchens, getting the architecture in place.
If you're not experienced in, you don't have an architect or an engineer who's worked for a long time in city government, understanding the differences between your zoning approval, your building inspection approval, your county health department approval, each step of the way, and one's county and one city. It's a lot of check boxes. I think it would be really helpful if we were able to not only get those things to be in one location and a little bit easier, but also kind of have that worksheet checkbox that anyone looking to open a restaurant can do.
My space hinders me a lot in a lot of aspects because we only have 38 seats. I don't make a lot of money here, and look for above 50 seats. It's that thing where it'll make a world difference because there's only a certain amount of people that will sit between 6:30 and 8. No one wants to sit later. No one wants to sit before. So you're looking at that window of your prime time as how many people can you turn in one seating and how much your profit margin is with one seating.
We've had a lot of challenges with people who want to use wood oven pizzas. There are ovens from Italy that don't meet U.S. fire code standards, and I've been involved in multiple cases where a restaurateur has made a very expensive purchase only to find the United States and the city unwilling to certify them. Getting all of that information out on the front end is critical. It gets really hard when you're 6 months in, opening day is supposed to be 3 weeks away, and you've hit that wall. Really lay the groundwork before you sign that lease, before you sign the loan, of what it means, and what is a neighborhood allowed? What's your capacity going to be? Can I have a sidewalk cafe? Do I have to shut my doors at a certain hour? Those are issues that are critical. We need to protect the quality of life in our neighborhoods, and that requires certain rules and regulations around noise and other issues.
Before the restaurant opens, you become a construction person and or someone that leads the construction people. You become an accountant, you become an office manager, you become an inventory control specialist, you become an architect, you become a janitor, you become a window washer.
And a restaurateur.
And a restaurateur, and a menu writer and a chef, all at the same time. And then once you open, it's being able to continue all of that at the same time as interacting with your customers, if you're in that type of an environment, which we are, for example, and keeping the authenticity, keeping the genuineness in what you're doing and who you are, so that that will come across in everything that you're putting out.
It's a double whammy if you're a young woman.
I think I get a lot of, being a young woman owning a business, I get a lot of people that don't assume that I'm being legitimate with what I'm saying at first, and they're like, so you own the restaurant? Usually is what they say.
For the first year, there were a lot of male customers who would make me come over to the table and recite my resume to them, so that they weren't sure how I ended up with this place. How did I get this restaurant? Who bought this restaurant for me? I mean, I've had a few jerks who were customers who got very upset because it was mostly women working here. I had a guy come in and immediately asked the bartender if any men worked here, and when she said yes, he asked whether they got paid okay. But the fact that was the first thing that came to his head when he came in, that, why are all these women working here? Why are, something must be wrong in this place because there are too many women working in this place. And I guess what I found most frustrating is that if you get to a certain level before people expect you to be there, then they just think you're lucky, as opposed to maybe you've just been working really hard to get to that level. And they will sort of try to halt your progress. But again, that's something where you just have to not care about what they think, and you just have to keep going forward and figure out a way on your own.
I think that most people in food will tell you that it is more than a full-time job. My business partner and I, when we started, were the only people that we had. So for several years, we did all of the dishes, all the mopping, all the food service, all the customer service.
Shop, come, start to prep, cook, make gnocchi, ragus, answer all the questions that the staff has at front and back of the house, put up the menu, make sure that at 5 o'clock when the door is open, we are ready. And that is like a Monday through Saturday run. And Sunday, Sunday is a day that, wake up a little late because Saturday is like one of the days that I go home late. I'm here like 9 o'clock, 9:30 in the morning, and I leave like about 3:30 in the morning there. So that's my longest day. So Sunday goes away a little bit of sleep, and then, family time, and then you start to think about it. Oh, Monday, okay, we were busy, now we gotta cook this, I gotta do this, I gotta do that.
But as we've grown, it's been great because we get to these points where we think like, we just can't do this anymore. Like we're exhausted. There's no way that we want to give any more of our like physical strength. But every time we get to that place where we think like we cannot go any further, something happens to change it, and we get more people involved, and we're able to pass off responsibilities and train people to do some of the things. So the more our team grows, the more exciting it is to just remember where we've come from. And
it was overwhelming, and it's still overwhelming, but that every time you're like, oh my God, maybe we should just sell it and get out of this. But it's an addiction. It's, when you see people with a smile on their face and they appreciate what you're doing and all that, it's like, it's a reward that makes you like, okay, I gotta do more. I gotta make sure that everybody's always happy.
Historically speaking, cooks were these just like crazy people who people considered to be like ex-cons and, people that couldn't get into the military and all this goofy stuff. But with the resurgence of food and cooking as a craft, people are looking at chefs and servers and managers and all of the above as craftsmen. People are starting to understand that you have to pay a little bit more to have these people deliver a quality experience. It's no longer, the majority of the servers are just waiting to become movie stars. People are doing it and choosing it as a career, and I've worked with people who have bachelor's degrees and master's degrees, and they started serving because they didn't have a job, and then were like, I'm not going to look for a job. This is actually a very viable means of making a living.
Now that we have these more interesting, creative, high-end restaurants, servers, bartenders, sure, their wages have definitely gone up. Tips have definitely gone up, not wages. But for the poor saps that are the cooks and the dishwashers and the managers, no.
You don't make a lot of money in restaurants. So it's, and I don't make a lot of money here. I make $35,000. It's not a lot. People think I'm rolling in it. I have honey all over me. I'm just rolling in $1 bills, or maybe $100 bills. That makes more sense. But I'm not. Like, I'm happier that, I work for myself and I created something, but, it's not a labor of wealth. It's a labor of love.
So food is an intimate thing, and that's something that, going back a little bit to Bill Fuller, he's, very big proponent of that. I mean, you are holding somebody's trust very much. I mean, if I'm giving you something to put into your body, I mean, I have to take it with the utmost level of being serious. I mean, it's just like, a healthcare situation. I mean, it's important. And then, you go even further and you have people with allergies. I mean, there was people who'd come into salt and their children would have deathly allergies. I mean, to have somebody trust, I mean, they're basically putting, their kid's life in your hands. If you give that kid peanuts or you don't care about making sure that the shrimp doesn't get mixed in with the beef, you could do some serious damage.
If somebody has celiac disease, you have to take it very, very seriously, like a peanut allergy, because people can get really sick. And so what that would mean on a busy Saturday night is that everyone on the lawn changes their pans, their towels, their aprons, their knobs, everything. So it kind of puts a stop to restaurant operations.
I think people are starting to realize that we need to keep these people who are serious around and pay them as such so they can treat it as a career, so they're not on to the next thing. And especially in a smaller city like Pittsburgh, it's hard to find a staff. And when you find a staff that works well together and cares and shows up and really, pushes themselves to do better, I mean, you have to keep those people, and you have to give them what they want and need to be able to live a fulfilling life outside of the restaurant so that they can come and do their job at a high level every day.
The idea that a certain group of people have to put on a show, do things to get extra money instead of just being paid a wage for their job is kind of ridiculous and a little dehumanizing, I think.
I guess what I object to with tipping and how servers are perceived is they're part of the restaurant. We're all working together as a team in this restaurant, and I don't like that somehow they're separated out. I think they should be paid fully by me, and not paid fully by me in a convoluted way where I create the environment that they make the tips that then they get paid. If you're a good server, and I have great servers, you deserve the respect that you would be doing this because you want to create a great environment for your customers, and because you are committed to the restaurant, and because you enjoy it, and not that you're working for a tip. I don't like that.
The one that everybody's most used to, I guess, is the one where it looks like you make less money on paper than you actually take home. It's where whatever you made today, say your sales were $1,000 net, and you think maybe I made 20% all day, so maybe I'm expecting about 200 before tip outs, and then I do tip outs myself to the bar, to the bus, to the door, and so on, and the rest of it goes in my pocket. Do you want to go out for a beer now, which turns into 3, which turns into a round of shots, and then you don't have as much in your pocket as you had when you left the restaurant? Your life runs on cash, you make lots of deposits in the bank, and you can't establish credit because you make $2.83 an hour, your paychecks are 0, and you're pretty much paying taxes on whatever you report. And that's the old school way, which definitely still exists, and I really liked that way. And then what we did at Salt was we did a tip pool. Tip pools, I think, are pretty common in the cities, like the cities. If somebody thought that you did an especially good job and sneaked you a 20 on the side, you don't keep that in your pocket, you turn it in. You just do. If you got stuck with a table, a 10 top of campers that weren't spending any money, all drinking water, and they wouldn't leave, and they were really nice and said, I can't wait to come back. I'm going to tell all my friends to come here. And you're like, yay. But you're glad they had a good experience. You don't lose, because the people that had turn, two top, like generous people, everything flying, everybody puts into the pot, and then you look at your punch-in time and it gets divvied out by that. You get your money the next day in hand. So it's kind of like getting all of your tips, but you wait till the next day, you do get it in cash, and it's all reported, so your taxes are already taken out, everybody's already tipped out, so whatever's in your hand belongs to you. And then the latest one is, let's actually pay the staff a fair wage and stop tips.
So we introduced no gratuity at Bar Marco in April of 2015. There were really 3 problems we wanted to proactively solve that hit restaurants between years 3 and 5. 70% of restaurants fail in their first 3 years, 90% fail in their first 5. And if you're around for 3 years, it means that people at least like your food, service, and experience. What happens between years 3 and 5? First, in this industry, there's a lot of things that are very counterintuitive. So usually as revenues go up, if you're not able to scale higher and expand, your profits actually go down. That comes in from waste and from not giving your people the time to plan. Like Abraham Lincoln said, if you give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'll spend 4 hours sharpening the axe. So all the little things add up. You don't give your team enough time to order properly, plan properly, staff properly. The second thing that happens is that the servers then are incentivized to to work the busiest shifts straight through, which are Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and you have part-time people working the rest of the shifts. And when the part-time people are working the rest of the shifts, maybe they're not as bought in to the whole process and what you're doing. And the third thing is that it's not legal to tip the kitchen. So if you have people working at a tipped wage, which is below minimum wage, it's not legal to take their tips and distribute them to the kitchen or to anyone else who's helping them. So then you've created, for your third problem, this inherent conflict of interest between your front and back of the house, where when it's really busy, all the servers are making a lot of money, and the kitchen's getting paid the same to do 3 times the work they'd normally have to do. When it's really slow, which represents a bigger problem in America, especially in like retail, right, Gap or something like that, you're allowed to send your people home without paying them and no notice, really. And you didn't have an opportunity to pick up another job during those 10 minutes that you just got sent home. And ultimately, it hurts the culture of the organization and the business over the long term.
Bar Marco doing it, I think, is I think that place is the right size to experiment with something like that. And I like that they're doing that. I like that they're making sure that their back of house staff, who don't get tips, by law, they can't get tips. They're earning a higher wage and they're earning a living wage. And I think that's the story that people aren't telling as much. And that's the most important story about that.
Yeah, so all these people, like, they're coming in from New York, DC, LA, or whatever, and everybody's moving into Pittsburgh. That's great. I'm 100% for it. But they're pushing the people that started this city out like ants. So people from New York are looking at us like, oh, it's cheap. But the people that started this are looking at this like, well, now I'm being priced out of my own city. And the thing is, I'd rather have the people that been here buy the property and make the money and sell it at a reasonable price. These outside sources are tapping Pittsburgh in, and yeah, because Pittsburgh's great, but they're sucking it dry, and they're not letting the people that have built the city or are going to stay here. They're just going to come in, suck it dry, and then once there's no more oil to be pumped out of it, they're going to leave.
I think that what we've seen in the past 20 years is that we were looking to invest in any development that we ended up providing tax incentives and tax breaks to large restaurants that are national, that are flags that are all over the place. And it came at a cost to those who've been struggling and being able to survive, that have been paying into the tax base for years. We've de-emphasized the investment into retail, believing that retail follows rooftop. In other words, as Bob O'Connor said many years ago, if you build the base of the people, the retail will follow. And so we have decided to invest more into small businesses and into housing than into retail and parking garages. What I think that will do is even the playing field. So now the person that will want to start their own business will have the opportunity to look at grants and loan programs to be able to fix up that place on Penn Avenue and Garfield, be able to compete against the bigger places that had received tax subsidies, and be able to see a dream happen in basically any neighborhood in the city.
Our demographic and economic profile in our city is changing. Our economy is expanding. We have these tech companies coming in. Because people are migrating in and also getting younger, they're also looking for more varied sources of entertainment. And restaurants are the easiest. Restaurants are entertainment. They're not really your main source of your calories, hopefully not.
So to have a good cuisine, like to have a robust cuisine, you have to have, what is it, Jack Goody calls it, a knowledgeable core of eaters. Right? I love that phrase, right? And what do we mean by knowledgeable, right? It means people who are willing to experiment. It's like, I feel like the people that eat at the high-end restaurants, that's like one category of folks, and it's limited. And then you've got people in the city who are willing to be sort of experimental and explore and are in the lower price range because you can't eat at those kind of places every week. And then, but then what could be in the middle is really often funneled off into commercial and really commercial chain entities. That range of consumer, that range of eater, right, consumes ethnic food that's been commercially structured for them. At the coffee shop level of that, Starbucks and Panera and those kind of places, they fill that what Oldenburg calls the third place for us now, you know what I mean? And it shouldn't be a commercial space, but it is. And out where I live, the Panera, you go in there at 9 o'clock in the morning and there's lots of retirees and they take up booths and they stay there. And on Sunday, there's a lot of people who are coming from church, and it's sort of, so it occupies that space in community life. But if it went away, but the community has no say over where it's located, whether it'll stay there forever, what's offered, right? Whether they're comfortable allowing patrons to be there for that extended period of time. And I think you see that in restaurants as well. Chipotle may be a great company, right? It's a really good company in some ways, but they're kind of attending to that level of consumer in a way that in a different city, in a different place and time, you'd see smaller non-chain entities taking that space.
There used to be a sort of notion that a restaurant had to be a certain thing, right? So a restaurant had to be white tablecloth or maitre d' or, very precise sort of service. And that's still great. I think there's still a place for that. And I think there's a place for a restaurant that's really well run. But I think what you're finding now is more places that are starting to open that the service can still be really good, but is a little bit less stuffy. And so what we're lacking are more places like Gaucho, right? More places like Thin Man Sandwiches, where you're getting really good food, made by chefs, made by people who care, sourced in a really good way, but at a price that's a little bit more approachable and affordable. And I think when you see that happen, and I think you're going to start to see that happen in the next year or two, it's going to really open up a whole new world of possibilities for Pittsburgh food.
Honestly, everything kind of changed in the restaurant business with 9/11. What people wanted was different than what they had wanted pre-9/11. So that started making the food a little bit more casual, even though it was still being presented in a fancier setting. And nowadays, people are so much more aware of their food and what they're eating, and they want to eat something that interests them, that they find wholesome in whatever definition they describe that to be. They're looking for an authenticity. Probably people are eating out a lot more than they even really did, which is not good. The family meal at home is always kind of a foundation, but it's such a fast-paced world that we live in. I would imagine people are probably looking for a wider array in that price point so that they can do it more frequently as well. The destination dining and the celebration dining will always kind of be there as like a background facet, but I think people are looking to enhance their lives like on a daily basis with food.
There's a very vibrant do-it-yourself culture, and I think that that's what makes it attractive to a lot of people who are visiting too, is that there's this established group of restaurants that are like sort of old school, have been here for a long time. Then there's like another wave of restaurants that have opened right around the time of the beginning of the restaurant boom, like Tamari was one of them, for example. And now we're seeing them opening at such a fast clip that it will be interesting to see how that shapes food culture.
What makes a city great are its third places. There are a lot of cities in America where you have nice housing. There are a lot of cities in America with jobs. What makes someone say, I love Pittsburgh or I love Bloomfield, is that third place. That can be your church or synagogue, it can be your library, coffee shop, or park. But I think restaurants are a huge part of that, especially in today's culture. Restaurants are, they're gathering places. Culinary science has completely changed and revolutionized in the last 20, 30 years. When we think of a night out, the number one thing people talk about is dinner. It's not necessarily about like going to the movies anymore, like you might have had it in my parents' generation. It's what new restaurant you're gonna try. I think it's had a huge impact on, making Pittsburgh a buzz city. Has been our restaurant scene, and neighborhoods that have that have become your strong neighborhoods where you've seen residential growth, you've seen businesses come in because you want to have the happy hour spot underneath you or down the street. It makes a neighborhood. Without restaurants and a strong restaurant culture, I don't think you can really have the strength of a neighborhood you want to see in a city.